Photo Photos.
So let's go with another example. Let's start by adding a little bit of contrast. As always, we can always use this micro contrast. This is very easy. You can just click auto and then adjust whatever you want. Let's go with the exposure compensation a little bit. This is obviously too much. Let's lower down the highlights in the sky so we can have more details in the front. Let's open up those blacks a little bit and just see what can we achieve. Let's go with the S-curve a little bit. Yes, this is very nice. And just add a little bit of contrast. Okay, I like that. Yep. Does work for me very nicely. Remember that if you have a tool clicked and this is highlighted, you always have to unclick this. It will be a lot easier for you that way. If anything, we don't really need this. Highlights are already lowered, midtones makes everything darker. There's a little bit too much intensity in those colors because of the tone curve, so let me go here and turn on the color accentuation and remove a little bit of saturation from the image. Maybe not that much, but I want this to be a gloomy, dark, autumn, cold image. Okay, so this is golden. What can we do with greens, for instance? Let's bump up the saturation. It's obviously a little bit too much fake. You can try to move the colors of the greens somewhere towards orange, but it gives us also a little bit of purplish. Okay, something like that. A little bit more in accordance to all the rest. Those yellows here are I like those, they are very nice. Color rendering, different IC profiles, we don't need that. Lens sharpness. Push the limits, okay. Do we see that sharpness? Details and bokeh. Everything to the max. Let's see how it works. It's rendering, okay. And now enable the sharpness. Okay, the sharpness works very nicely indeed. I must say, I like that. Subtle, but very nice. Let's remove this sharpness here. Look at the highlights. It's most visible in the high contrast areas. Like here, it's very subtle, but it's there. I like that. This we don't need, and sharp mask we don't need. The image is sharp already. It's Sigma 18-35, my best lens. Would recommend for anyone that has an APS-C camera. And local adjustments. What I would like to say that this is very nicely done. It's pretty much the same as more or less in every software, but it's just how you do it. For instance, you can click local adjustments here. Also, and you have a point. Control point is more or less just a regular point, and if you had a brush in Lightroom, you changed the sliders on the right. Here you have those sliders here. Sorry, this micro contrast is not very visible, but you can see this here, and it's of course it's being rendered pretty fast, so it's very nice, so you can see the changes while you are changing those values here. And you have the light, the basics, the color stuff, and the details. So everything is here. And you can of course add anything you want. Now if you want something different, you can click right mouse button and, for example, choose a graduated filter. Like that. And it's just a standard filter, nothing fancy. But what I like is that it's just nicely done with those controls here. You can also see the change immediately. Pretty much this is the same in Lightroom. I would like to move this menu a little bit so I won't be distracted and I can see what I'm changing. But in the end, it looks very, very nice, and of course you can do whatever you want with this later on. Mask is already there. Of course you have masking, chroma, luma, so anything you want is here. And you can bump up the highlights. So I would say this is very nicely done. It's nothing new, it's nothing fancy. I mean, like, most of the softwares have only some new fancy filters, like the bokeh filters in Exposure X7, which is great if you need it. And for example, here we don't have anything like that. But on the other hand, this is just a couple of, well, I would say fancy stuff you either use or don't. Everything else, like this is pretty much the same as always. You can always add a new mask, which will get you a new layer here, and you can create a new adjustment, like for instance with a brush. Of course, here you can regulate the brush size, the feathering, and everything, the flow, opacity, just like in Affinity or Lightroom, and just paint a little bit. Paint a little bit, and then you can have the menu here and change this. It's not that responsive, but on the other hand, it still works very, very nicely. If you will be doing this slower, it will be a lot better, and those adjustments always work a little bit slow. So I won't be worried about that. And here you can simply turn off and on whatever you want. Remove those layers. It's very, very easy, very, very nice. So this is how you can do local adjustments in DxO Photo Lab 5. Is it worth it? Is it okay? Yes, it's comfortable, it's very nice. Like, it's the basics, right? So there you have it. Watermarks, effects, some different fancy stuff. I won't be going through this because my workflow for those programs is just like the basic things I can do right here. And yeah, DxO works very nicely. I must say that in the end, it's definitely stepping up with Capture One. Lightroom is obviously not in the questions anymore, especially for the blacks. I must say that the basic exposure, or as you can see here, a light panel, is something that you always work with, right? We need always to bump up the shadows, eventually the blacks, lower down the highlights, and this is like the most crucial part for me in any photography software to use, and DxO does this very nicely. And this is, guys, everything I wanted to tell you. If you have any comments, questions, leave it down below, and I'm happy to hear your thoughts on that subject. And that's it. Thanks for tuning in, and bye for now.